this is where the systems could be in place. But this realistically is the project area, for those of you who haven't seen this map before. There have been some discussions, and we're going to get to this in a minute, as to whether or not the easternmost boundary is at the right location. We're going to turn that discussion over to Doug in a minute. So the goals are to enhance regional transportation, to preserve the environment, strengthen the region in terms of our economies, and ensure high-quality recreation. Basically, we're looking at the Wasatch Mountains and trying to figure out what it's going to look like in its best-case scenario in 40 years. The organization is a whole lot of committees, and it doesn't look like nearly as many meetings as it is, but it's a lot. Right now, we're in the systems committees meetings. So there are employees from many of the Wasatch Back and council members going to the environmental, recreation, transportation, and economy system committees. And we're going to talk about those very specifically tonight. The timeline for this process is that this is phase one that we're in right now. And phase one is costing approximately $5 million. The end date is about January 30th of 2015. So just to give you a sense as to where we are in that year. After that, it's really looking at what comes out of the first phase and what do we want to do. The timeline, this is a little bit more in depth, but this is saying that the system groups are getting together, they're coming up with scenarios, they're then going to try and merge those scenarios across the transportation, economics, recreation, and environmental teams, and then they're going to have that presentation of the preferred scenarios in January. There's been some public engagement, but we're working on doing some additional public engagement along the back. The goal of the process, just to give you a sense in a little more detail on phase two, is that if there's a transit system or some sort of transportation mode or water systems, you may be required to do a federal NEPA process. So if what comes out of phase one says build something, we're going to have to go through this federal process. But the second part of this is that it could also include opportunities for us to talk about open space or agricultural preservation, land use changes, ideas for recreational enhancement as a team, as a collaborative body. Specifically though, this team in this room has been pulling together staff to talk about what we really want. And so the reason you have a large number of staff here tonight is because most of these individuals have been meeting every other week together to try and come up with where we're heading. It's been a great group, and I can only say thank you that such cool people are coming. It's a really engaged part of the staff, and they're just incredible people. So with that, I'm actually going to turn this over to Doug. Over here to talk about possibly expanding that first map.
I'm Doug Smith, I'm with the Wasatch County Planning Department. As Ann mentioned, that previous map showed the boundary for the mountain accord stop on the west side of Highway 40. We've been talking about expanding that. You can see from this map, this is the RSPA map, the Resort Special Plan Area. And just as a side note, we're going through a complete rewrite of that road right now with the Deer Valley Expansion Plan and MIDA and some things that have happened in the last 2 years. We're working on updating that. You see there's quite a bit of development that goes on both the east and west sides of Highway 40. So our thought was, and in talking with Boyd, who's our water quality person, we talked about expanding that to the shoreline of Jordanelle, or that east side of the RSPA area, to include that in the study area. And as Ann mentioned, once this presentation is done, we're hoping that there will be some discussion about whether that's a good idea or not. In fact, we initially talked about including the whole Jordanelle Basin overlay zone in the study area. We thought that might be too big. And on the east side of the lake, there's not nearly the amount of density as on this west side. So,
for conversation. Do council members have thoughts, or mayors have thoughts on whether or not they want this expansion area, or if there are other expansion areas that we should be talking about? I should give you a little bit of an understanding. So there are two different areas in this project. One is where might there be actual project infrastructure, which is different than all the systems that feed into it, right? So there may be feeding into it from Heber's downtown, but there may never be a project in Heber. So what we're saying is that there may be a project that actually goes to the coast of Jordanelle, and that's why we felt like it may be a good idea to expand the boundary to that coastline. Yes?
How much of the plan that way will impact or benefit the new Mayflower ski infrastructure that's shown in blue? I mean, that would seem like that might be a valid reason to be included in the expansion area.
That's currently in the plan area, if I'm not mistaken.
It is. So that 40 that you see going down the middle, that's the line right now. So it's everything on the right of that area that we're recommending, if this team is in agreement, that we add into the project area.
For all the lakes, that stuff.
Yeah, correct.
I think to a degree on the Wasatch County side, part of the purpose of the course is to environmentally preserve the canyons and so forth, but to move skiers and connect opportunity for skiers. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry for the state, and that's understood. But I think also that movement needs to be recognized. It can come from this direction that way as well. And we have already in our area, in our regional area, much of what we can offer to people who come stay here, and then for them to go to these other areas expanded for them in an environmentally good way as well. So I think that's a strong argument that we want to at least look at this expansion, because it's a two-sided deal. It's not just coming from one side in and then back out. It can be a terminus at both ends, and so I think that's an important thing to look at.
Well, one of the discussions that we've had, just so people know, is that Park City, in some ways, is dwarfed by the size of the approved developments along some of the R-Spa and going even further around the lake. And so making sure that that discussion continues to be at the table, even though you don't see it today, it doesn't mean it's not going to come with a really strong impact. So that was part of our thought process at least.
And it would seem to me that the summer recreation is only going to grow. So, I know sometimes we're all skiing focused, but
We look beyond that.
the biking has just exploded, and we need to, since apparently the skiing's going to get higher and higher up the mountain, we need to recognize that summer is significant as well.
And I've been asked by our reporter if you could please state your name at the start of your comment, that would be great.
When you say a project, are you talking about an end point of a bus line, or what exactly are you talking about?
That could be one outcome, but it could also be for water quality. If we needed to further, let me give an example. So there have been discussions of tunneling, which is deeply concerning. So if it's a tunnel, then how are you going to protect our water? How are you going to clean our water? Who's going to pay for the infrastructure to assure that we get the quality of water that we have? So that could be an infrastructure comment, is that the Wasatch can't exist the way it does today unless we have more opportunity for capturing and maintaining our water.
And who is funding this initial project, or the initial phase?
So it's, right now they've fundraised $3.8 million. And I believe the state has put in $2 million, and local governments and some nonprofits have put in approximately $1 million. So they're trying to diversify that as much as possible. They've been meeting with multiple for-profit agencies as well to see if they'd be willing to participate, because they'll be dramatically impacted. And that's the fundraising campaign there. Yes?
I think the whole reason we're trying to develop this is, of course, to protect not only the water and the view sheds, but the air quality, right?
Right.
And to me, if you're going to have that be one of your main focus, then we need to be able to get this expansion area down into our valley, this is Heidi Franco, into the Wasatch County area, you know, even as close as we can to Heber City and Midway, because tourists come there, we're having events all the time, we're really concerned about our geography and air quality, right? And if we're trying to be proactive in this way to preserve what we have on this side of the range, you know, we've got to think about expanding that so that, you know, we can take care of the entire region's needs.
And that's actually a great segue into the next slide. So I'm going to go to those now, which are the framework statements that we believe are unifying us. Staff have done a first draft. That's all this is. So all of this can be changed, and I am open to making edits even as we go if we want. But our goal is really to come up with those unifying statements. If air quality is where we need to focus, then we need to